to pay back the money I owed always meant that I was sending that message out to the consciousness that's all around us, and the universe, whatever you want to call it. And the other thing I did was I always worked with my creditors to gain the best repayment offers, and of course one of the first things you do is you manage to stop any interest on accounts. So that was all right. And the funny thing was that I was worried about bailiffs and bankruptcy and things like that, and I thought, well, I'll preempt it, I'll go and get the bankruptcy forms just in case. But I did ring up some bailiff type people, I think, and I asked them what happens. So all this was a constant thing, so you're talking about quite a few years here. And in actual total, from the moment that I was struggling financially to the time when I sorted it out, was 40 years. So that's rather a long time. So you end up with this underlying worry. Your life is, can I afford to get to the end of the week or the end of the month? On my lowest point was, can I afford to go and get a pint of milk? But I was still renting on it. And one of the interesting things, I've never used food banks, I've never been homeless, I've always still managed. So even with all that going on, I was still paying my way in one way or other. Okay, you can help with, you become entitled to benefits, but again, another of my intentions was I want to be off those as well. I don't want to, I want to be self-contained and self-sufficient. Then I found out that debt, because it was so long, debt agencies start selling your debts to other agencies. And before you know what's happened, nobody's got the original record. But nevertheless, they will buy en masse a number of people's debts. So they might buy £40,000 of debt for £10,000 among 10 people. And then if they can get anything over £10,000 back, they're quids in. So that's roughly how it works. And then even one company even bought it back again several years later, so I had the same company again. But they did start, interestingly, to send you offers. So instead of saying, well, you owe £4,000, but if you pay £2,000, we'll write it off. And when they do that, it becomes something known as unsatisfied. But what it means is that you can't be chased for it again, and it's just forgotten about. And actually, in a lot of ways, some of the debt that I accrued was actually not money that I had actually spent or used. It was part of interest, it was part of other things. In fact, at one point I thought, well, I'll try another company, because this was just before the PPI issue where people were getting money back for the false selling of loans and loan agreements. And I realised that you could do these things yourself, but the first one that went under, I think, was Barclays. So I put my debt management with a third-party company that cost me £25 a month, because they said that they would look into also the credit card side of the same sort of a thing, and they would investigate actually, how much I actually owed rather than how much I was told I owed. They went into liquidation soon after, but before they did that, and they advised me to not have anything more to do with my creditors, and promptly got me a CCJ, and it cost me £500 in the court, and I wasn't even there. So I went back and took it all back again and managed it myself. So that's sort of that bit of an extended history, but the fact that they will offer opportunities to pay off things is quite good, really, when people know that happens. It's a bit like having dipped my toe into dating sites in the past and things like that. You'll find that it might be £20 or £30 to enrol per month or whatever. But if you do the first month and then you cancel it, but you're still on there, eventually they say, oh, we'll let you have it for £10 or £4.99, and then you can go back in. And this is a bit like the way, so they'd rather have some money from you than no money at all. So just moving on then to why do we want more money? Well, I suppose really it's about financial freedom. Most people think in those terms, when I've got enough money I'll be able to do more things. Some people, like me, may not want to work formally, but we enjoy working. I think it's a natural thing. Human beings do like doing things. We don't really like just sitting around. So we all want to be doing something. But we also want to end our struggle with perhaps the daily cost of living. That's part of the financial freedom. We want more money to give us more ability to choose what we want to do. There are specific things that we both need and specific things that we would like to have for a better quality of life. Then from a vanity point of view, we want to perhaps be seen as successful, or we want more self-esteem and respect from others, our peers and things like that. But one of the things, of course, is leisure time, and we want more leisure time. And in my parents' generation, leisure time was really quite a luxury, whereas these days, you know, we've got a society that enables us generally to have more leisure time than we've ever had before. So we want to do more things in our lives. We also want to be in control and not controlled by others. We may want to be able to be altruistic and be able to help others, family and friends. We may want to do what we enjoy, where work is a pleasurable pastime and no longer feels like work. And I think that's where I've reached these days. That I don't work anymore, but I work very hard within things that sometimes I'm given to do. But I don't see it as work. And then maybe you would want to support a community, a charity, or a good cause. But one of the things that are connected to Never Mind a Million is that you don't run a marathon until you've trained yourself up to it in smaller stages with some consistency of practice. So you have to, in a way, begin where you're comfortable. So if you've never had more than £200, then aim for £1,000, because that's possible. If you've got £100,000, you could aim for £500,000, because that is possible in relation to what you're used to being able to deal with. It has to be both attainable and comfortable in the mind. Now, the conventional rational approach, we've got the roadmap of life that says, get a job, find a relationship, buy a house, start a family, build up a pension, retire, and enjoy a life of free time and leisure in your remaining years. That's the model of a sort of typical thing in our culture. And that's attained by working hard, really hard, saving money, investing, maximising monetary returns, careful planning, a clear idea of where you're heading, ensuring you have something for a rainy day, solve problems by giving them your attention, applying risk assessments before you take action on anything. And the conventional spiritual view of money is a bit different, because that's sort of, more like, well, decide what you want the money for, know how much you need for something specific, imagine having what you want as if you already have it, and if you have received unexpected money, then tithe 10% of it to a charity or some give something away. And also to focus on solutions and use positive affirmations. And one of the things about focusing on solutions, because if you think about it, when we are in school, we're given problem solving to do, and someone says, right, you've got to think about the problem and think of all the things that can go wrong. And this is actually a sort of antithesis to the more spiritual. When I say spiritual, I'm not talking in terms of spiritual religious, I'm talking more in terms of spiritual metaphysical. We don't really have a good name for this. There's mysticism, esotericism, or being esoteric. So we'll just call it spiritual, because we kind of understand what we're all about. But there is a deeper understanding of metaphysics that come into this. And one of those things is knowing who you are, knowing your own nature. It's exploring personal beliefs which may not be serving you. And you may have come across in recent times that there are lots of people channeling people. They're channeling non-physical entities. Now, the most famous of those was Jane Roberts in the 60s and 70s, who channeled the Seth material. And then later on we had Abraham and Esther, we had Esther Hicks and Jerry Hicks, and Esther channeled the collective Abraham, only she said it was interpreting, she didn't like the word channeling. And then we had Bashar, who is described as an alien who channels through Darryl Anchor. This caused me to write the book, and there are some copies here today, called Seth Abraham Bashar, All That You See Is Yourself. But more and more channels are coming through people, and I think, I know of about 15 now, and that's only in the last year that I've discovered these other ones. And they all say things like, you've got to understand that your beliefs create the reality you experience. And what happens is that you have an emotional response to something, and you see the world as the physical world around you coming at you. And you think that in order to change that, I've got to do something physical to change it. But it's also the beliefs that you hold. So I could actually hold a belief that I developed when I was younger, let's call it poverty consciousness. Whereas, and maybe I could say that this side of the room has a similar belief. This side of the room has never experienced that because they don't have that. So we're in the same room, in the same place, and yet we've got different beliefs about money and finances and things like that. But at an individual level, if there was something that you're finding challenging, whether it's health or money or anything else, you do need to try and say to yourself, well, what do I believe is the reason for this? What would I have to believe to be in this situation? What sort of person would I have to be to change this? The other thing we've talked about at other times, I've mentioned, is noticing your self-talk. And I have to admit that it's all very well me standing here eulogising about all these things, but I also struggle with some of these things myself. So I've not reached sainthood status in any way. And my self-talk to me isn't always very good, because I live on my own and sometimes I get frustrated and call myself something. But it's worth that you do notice it, because as you notice, you can actually correct it. You can say, well, actually, you're not a stupid idiot. You're actually very good at these things. You're just wanting to do it quicker than you can. Notice the words that you use with others as well, and the words that they use with you. So when you're having a conversation about anything, and you might have a conversation that touches on money and finance, somebody might come up to you and say, how are you? Oh, I'm not so bad, is what we normally say. And then it gets into a conversation, oh yeah, cost of living crisis. We're told we've got to believe it's a crisis by media. There's all sorts of these messages. Some of them are subliminal, some of them are very overt. But you find yourself saying, oh yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? The country's going to pot. But that's not what you want to be doing. You want to be moving away from that if you can, and steer the conversation. Certainly listen to someone complaining if you want to, and let them say, because it's actually quite cleansing sometimes for us to have a moan, isn't it? The entities that channel through people say, you shouldn't even do that, but, And then think about where your primary focus is. I mean, I think most of us probably know by nature whether we're a half glass empty or a half glass full type of personality, regardless of what we might try and convince ourselves to the contrary. And then think about, is your primary focus on lack, or is it more on, possibility, hope, and abundance? And I've met people on both sides of this. Are you acting from a position of desperation, or are you acting from a position of personal power when you do anything? Are you building on what you are already seeing? So I look at this room, and the only reason we can share this room and actually agree upon things is because it's actually done more sort of, I can't remember the word, but it's like hypnosis. We hypnotise the room, and we all have versions of this room. So however many of us there are that many versions of this room, but we have a sort of an unspoken agreement. We're all emanating these energies, and a lot of them are communicative energies at a level that we don't usually, address in terms of words. So in physical reality, everything that you're experiencing is what you already created up to this point. So in a way, we tend to be living in the past. We think we're living in the present, but what we're actually doing is we're seeing up to this point what we've actually created in our lives. And in order to change something, you have to change it from within and project it out. So I look at the room and say, for example, I look at this room and I think it needs decorating in brighter colours. Then I need to first imagine what it might look like in my mind, or go and look at pictures of rooms with brighter colours. So eventually, it may not take me to get up and decorate it, but one day I'll come back and it will be bright colours. And I've helped to change another reality. So anything you want to change, even things like worries about money, you have to feel different about it inside yourself first. And this is why we need to work on small things to start with. So you focus on something where you can feel enjoyment and maybe passion, and you hold that in mind. You celebrate any small achievements or improvements in circumstances. You express gratitude wherever you are able. So gratitude is a big one in a sort of spiritual community. And you can be grateful for a little flower or a clever little insect. It doesn't have to be big, but the temperament is the same, that you're expressing gratitude, thinking how wonderful that is, how clever. I couldn't make one of those ants, you know. And you look for things to appreciate. I mean, Abraham Hicks says, always reach for the better feeling thought. Look for things to appreciate in your daily life on a moment-to-moment basis. I started keeping a manifestation journal as well. I haven't kept up to date with it, but I thought, oh yeah, probably I'll have a look for that. I think I probably put 3 things in there. And I found about 5 or 6 pages with about 40 different things that I'd manifested, and I thought, oh, I didn't remember I'd manifested that. And it's quite good if you can do that as well and see what you can manifest, and whether it's the money or whether it's something else. Because sometimes when you're down on yourself, you kind of think, well, nothing ever happens to me. And this is why I also started off in 1997 and wrote the first booklet called How We Perform Negative Miracles. Because that wasn't meaning to be a negative book, it was meant to be saying, we have miracles going on every day around us that we are involved in creating. But some of those miracles annoy us like mad. So you might be driving along the road and there's no one else on the road, but up ahead is a skip that someone's left on the side, and suddenly, in the distance, is another vehicle coming, and you're both going to reach the skip at the same time. And so therefore, one of you's got to stop and let the other through, and yet it's been empty. So that would be a negative miracle, in a way, because it is miraculous that 2 people can arrive at that point. You know, it's not as if they're arriving, you know, the skip's up there and one arrives here and gets past the skip and comes to the other one. So, keeping a manifestation journal or something is quite a good idea. So when something's gone right in your life, then you could make a little note about it. Focusing your attention, that's quite hard for a lot of us. It's always been quite hard for me. I rather suspect, having done a bit more research into myself in recent times, that I was probably autistic as a child, but we didn't have autism when I was a child. So I think there's an element of that in me, and I think it grew worse after COVID. And the other thing, I think, is that I do find it difficult to concentrate on things. So there's that. I haven't got anything hyper, I've just got the attention deficit disorder. I used to say to some people jokingly, I think I'm a bit manic, I'm a manic depressive, but I don't get the manic bit. And you know, it's sort of, I feel shortchanged. But one way that helped me focus is to write down the things that I want to imagine. Because when you're occupied and you've got to focus on what you're writing, you do tend to concentrate more. If you just sit here thinking it in your head, you'll suddenly find another distracting thought coming in, or you'll think, when's he going to stop speaking so I can go home, you know, that sort of thing. And when you write down, the other thing that Abraham says is, because people often say, why don't things happen quicker? I spend all my time focusing on things I want, it takes ages. And they say, well actually, law of attraction, as they call it, kicks in after 17 seconds. So if you can think about anything for at least 17 seconds, you start the ball rolling. But when you think of it for up to 68 seconds, then you are basically delivering through your mind 2 million action hours. So rather than working hard for 2 million hours, 68 seconds can move the mountain just as easily. But writing it down is very good, and you can write it, and then you can read it, and when you read it back, you can actually make it last 68 seconds. It doesn't matter if it lasts a bit longer. And then you let go of it, and then you come back to it another day. And you may actually write something new the next day, or you might reread what you wrote, because it might feel good. And you really read it in a write it in a positive way. So you're not saying things like, one day I will have, or when this happens. You've got to write it as, today I met somebody and we went out to this amazing beach. It's got to be in the present tense, because that's what you're trying to change the reality with. So, like I said a minute earlier, ask who would I need to be? What sort of a person would I need to, how would I need to behave to attract my desired outcomes? And that's also, the way you would be with your money as well. And one of the things that you might do is if you were struggling a little bit, you go to the shop, you might go to charity shops. But I would say to people now, if you go to a charity shop, do not go to a charity shop because you are poor. Go to a charity shop because it's fun to find something unexpected. That's a completely different mindset. Okay, you might get something that's cheaper and that fulfills the requirement, but don't go in with the sense that I can't afford anything else, I'm going to look in here. Go in with the sense that this is an interesting place. I mean, they're exciting to look at, these charity shops. Same when you go to the supermarket or anything like that, and you go, people will make a beeline for the reduced food. And again, don't go because you can't afford the extra 5p on the broccoli.